everybody, welcome to a very special episode of American Jew, The Interview. We have Mark Strausman here, very excited. Mark was the famed chef from Fred's at Barneys, and he is now the chef and owner of Mark's off Madison, and he is an American Jew, grew up in Queens, New York, and I'm so excited to have him on the podcast. Mark, how you doing?
I'm good. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I mean, it's kind of an interesting area. I mean, I feel something every time I come down to this area we're in.
Right, Mark was just telling me how he used to come down to the LES back in the day when it was all just fabrics and clothing, and he remembers that time, and now it's changed a lot. It's become, I guess, the Jews are out and the hipsters are in.
Right, but a lot of the hipsters are Jews.
Yeah, it's true.
It's perfect. You know, there's nothing better than a Jewish hipster.
Okay, all right. I guess if you're gonna take a hipster, I guess I prefer that they be Jewish.
But it kind of works around here anyway.
Yes. So, and you grew up, Mark, in Queens, right?
Yeah.
So was it a very Jewish neighborhood where you grew up?
It was a mixed neighborhood. I grew up in a city housing project that was kind of built after, I think, the Korean War, but, probably World War II too, because they were close together. And, there were a lot of Jewish men in the service back then. I mean, there's been movies done about that stuff. And, like Barry Levinson and things like that. And it was a Jewish, Italian, and Irish. It was really the three immigrants that came into this country basically around the same time.
Okay.
1890s to 1920.
And did you guys all get along growing up, or were you divided like the Jewish kids and the Italian kids and the Irish kids, or was it just kind of like a mix and everybody was friends?
You were friends but enemies. We were assimilating. We were the generation of assimilation.
Okay.
Absolutely. But everybody had different religious beliefs. So, one on Saturday, the other on Sunday. And we were kids. We were, adolescents, which can be the most, nasty and, mean-spirited.
Right.
But we did basically get along. And we also always got along when we were playing sports.
When you're playing sports, that's what brings everybody together, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so when sports is like, as long as you're rooting for the same team, it's okay.
Or playing. We used to play sports all the time. I mean, this was before Game Boy. This was before anything. So it was like punch ball or, baseball or, touch football. I mean, it depended upon the season. We would go out and play for 6, 7, 8 hours a day because, we didn't go to really date. There was no sleepaway camp, was around. I went to a sleepaway camp by the B'nai B'rith and stuff. But after a while, you kind of didn't want to do that. And you stayed with your friends. And, I grew up in a courtyard where it was in a housing project. And it was middle class at the time. And it was a courtyard. So, you were around a whole bunch of kids that, which now have become Facebook friends if they're still alive.
Right, not Instagram, maybe TikTok.
Right, but basically Facebook because they're older. I was on the younger end of the baby boom. I'm 66. The baby boom is really, I guess, 80 to 60, I suppose. Age group today.
Okay.
I'm still part of that generation, although have made myself not to become a Luddite. I don't think that's good for business.
Okay. Mark, when you were growing up in Queens at the time, did you ever experience any anti-Semitism?
Well, yeah, absolutely. You did. It was, all anti-Semitism. The worst anti-Semitism is the subtle one.
Okay.
I think, because when it's raging and it's in your face, people who are not Jews but are human beings will come to the aid and will, be on your side. Where it's subtle is where it's the most dangerous. I mean, obviously, it's dangerous in general. I don't want to, marginalize it. But, we were kids. We were nasty. I mean, you called me a kike, I called you a Mick. It's like, we fought, we had fights. I mean, I grew up in a, I grew up nowhere near like the way my clientele.
Okay, but
A lot of my friends became electricians, and not too many lawyers.
not too many lawyers. So would you say it was more just kind of like, teasing each other and making fun of each other and just using what made you guys different to do so, opposed to like hatred towards the Jewish people?
I mean, back then that's what you felt, but now when you get older, you think that they obviously heard this in their household. And, look, I mean, what do they say? There's truth in a joke.
Right.
And I think it's the same thing with anyone who says that. And again, back then it was different. I mean, if you go look at Peter Sellers, the Pink Panther, and some of the lines that they have in there that I wouldn't even repeat today.
Okay, it definitely was a different time now that we're living in like this woke era,
Right.
where people are so easily offended, and everybody is walking on eggshells because they don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. You could kind of like to say get away with, it's like, I don't know, but you could get away with more back then, because also I think there was more that was acceptable, and I guess we hadn't evolved culturally the way that we have nowadays.
Right, and there wasn't the internet. There was no checks and balances. It's like if I remember watching this movie, and I forget it was about William F. Morrow, and the great line, because the whole audience in the movie theater just cracked up, and he goes, "Well, it's 6 o'clock. We can't speak to them until tomorrow."
Okay.
But that's the same thing with anti-Semitism. That's the same thing. When you have you could go on a soapbox in the schoolyard in Queens and scream your head off, and maybe someone will hear it on Casino Boulevard. But today you have a piece of technology that can magnify you worldwide.
Right, and also that you could be anonymous with it. There's a lot of anonymity online. Do you think that obviously, unfortunately, there still is anti-Semitism today, but have you noticed a change in anti-Semitism from when you were growing up?
What I've noticed is that it's still here today.
Okay.
Look, we're a country that is puritanical. I mean, the things that was going on, because when in the 60s you thought you helped, you were alive to watch some of this stuff move on, and it hasn't.
No, it probably won't ever move on.
Well, you never say never, but so I think with Roe versus Wade, anti-Semitism, all these beliefs that some are tied, I guess, to religion, but just are we live in a country that's it's huge. I mean, that's the difference. I lived in Europe for 4 years when I was working, and you cross over the border from France to Germany, there's a completely different, I mean, the topography looks different, the whole, the buildings look different. You go from Pennsylvania to Ohio, unless you saw the sign for the border, you wouldn't know you were there.
Right. So the only thing that stays the same is hatred towards Jewish people.
Well, or just it's a big country, so there's a lot of diversity, and there's going to always be hatred. I mean, I think look, Jews have been persecuted for centuries. It's not going to stop. And then, sometimes, like what's going on now in the Middle East doesn't help.
Right. No, absolutely not. It's horrible what's going on
Yeah.
in the Middle East. Growing up, were you very religious? Were you more just like identifying that you were Jewish, or was it like a daily part of your life? Did you participate in any of the rituals?
Basically, we grew. First of all, I grew up Reformed.
Okay.
I went to the second Reformed temple in the United States, which is still around, by the way. It's called Free Synagogue of Flushing. It's a national monument. The religious school that I went to, for my bar mitzvah and then for the confirmation, because Reformed Jews believe in having religious education until 16. More cultural.
And then once you get your license, you don't need it anymore.
Exactly. And but the reality is now today it's a Asian school. But they own the building and it's endowed.
But you still get together during Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. But and so it was a complete shoot off of Stephen Wise. So being in that build, because we still go back there for High Holy Days occasionally, and just being in that building, it's like it feels like in a sense the Vatican. Because I've never really been inside of Temple Emmanuel, but it's just this. Stephen Wise was just this institution that tried to modernize Judaism for I'd say for North Americans, anyone who was wanted to have Jewish culture, but the services were mostly in English. The rabbi read in Hebrew, and you could wear a yarmulke. You didn't have to wear a yarmulke, and it was and it's kind of true. There is this thing about when you become extremely judgmental on how people are Jews, judging
Right, absolutely.
Jews
In Israel, they're having that problem
Judaism,
right now. Right.
He's not a good Jew. Oh, why? Does he kill someone? It's like, why would he not be a good Jew? I mean, he would not be a good Jew if he broke the law, or if he was not a nice, or she was not a nice person. But, because they decide that maybe they don't want to fast, does that make him a bad Jew? I don't know. I'll probably get a lot of letters for that, but you never know.
Right. I mean, it's more important, I think, to be a good person. And then if you identify as yourself as a Jew and to, participate in Judaism the way you like, no one should have sort of be dictating your level of spirituality.
Yeah, I mean, spirituality is like a cafeteria.
Okay.
Like you take, you walk down a line and you're like, I'll have some of that. Nah, I don't want that. Yeah, I'll take that. I'll have some Jell-O. I'll have that. You kind of take what you want, and it works that way. What's the biggest problem in this world, and where anti-Semitism comes from, is judgment.
Absolutely. And it's sad that, there's all this judgment coming to the Jews, and then the Jews ourselves are judging ourselves about not being Jewish enough or whatever. And, I know, of course, in Israel, they're trying to do things like change the laws of return and different things like that, and ostracize people that they don't believe are as Jewish as, they should be, especially with the new extremist government. But I want to talk to you more about Jewish food, and there is like a Jewish style to your cooking.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Do you think was that something that like was from like your childhood that you took with you from like a parent or a grandparent that kind of cooked the food that you just loved, or like how did the Jewish style of food influence your cooking?
Well, it's when you have a long career, you have different highs and lows in cuisine. And so, I go to hotel school. I decided I wanted to be a chef. I go to hotel school because I didn't want to go to the Culinary Institute. And then I want to go to Europe because, I want to be Paul Bocuse, right?
Okay.
I want to be Paul Bocuse, a Jewish Paul Bocuse. And when I remember coming home from Europe and my mother saying, do you want to do Passover? And I was like insulted. I didn't want Passover. Mom, I didn't go to Europe to cook, brisket.
Okay.
And she got it. It was fine. And all of a sudden, throughout the years, customers, when you start, once I became a chef and then a chef owner, even though before I was a chef owner, I was a chef partner. So, I was out talking with customers, and when you're on 74th and Madison, when in Rome you have Romans, when on 74th and Madison you have Jews. And, I saw that there was a business there. And then I also, my children started to get born, my parents started to get older, and I started to come home a little bit, I think. I decided that, because if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it the best. I'm going to do it perfect. So I'm going to do it like Paul Bocuse if he was making a Passover Seder.
Okay.
You know, and in technique and in method, because cooking is made up of technique and method, and that's where it started. And then I decided in the beginning to do a Italian Jewish Seder.
Okay,
Using the word
Italian Jewish
Jews
Seder.
and coco pazzo. Seemed like a great idea at the time, and it was for a while. But you know, eventually you give in. You know, so I go to Rome, and through Princeton, someone in Princeton, I was introduced to these two families, and they were very nice to open up their homes to me and their recipes and their ideas. And my ex-wife and I, Susan, my writer and my best friend, and she's not Jewish, you know, because you know Jewish men. You know, I mean, Adam. You know, every time that apple is there, you got to take a bite of it, right? And so we go to, you know, we do this research, and it's amazing. And the first year is great, the second year is great. And then I remember this guy like coming after my throat because there was no gefilte fish. I'm like, yeah, of course there's no gefilte fish.
Okay, Italians aren't into gefilte fish.
No, nobody should be really. I mean, we make good gefilte fish. That's right. I actually like it but I like it because it reminds me of my father when I was 14 and he passed away. So, you know, it's not because of the flavor. You know, it's like, but it's something that if I eat once a year, it just reminds me of who I am. But no, they didn't. And they ate rice.
Okay, so it's a Sephardic thing, right?
Yeah. Sephardic. So, you know, throughout by the time I had Campania, which was 94, I'd say by 97, 98, it became an Ashkenazi Passover.
An Ashkenazi Passover.
Yeah, I mean, come on, you know, it's like tired of arguing, you know, it's like we did an article and we must have got 1,000 letters. I mean, I got people, today I would have gotten death threats.
Wow.
Over lentils and over rice, and I mean, that's what they ate. I mean, these people were Italian Jews. I mean, I'm sitting in it, I'm just writing what they're telling me, you know, and then you do the research, and Sephardics do that.
Okay, so this was in like your cookbook.
It was. This was also in, you know, articles that I did. Yes, eventually it was in the first cookbook. But, you know, again, you know, I mean, I don't want to say it's anti-Semitism, but, you know, anyone who's, you know, calling me up and screaming at me for using rice on Passover when it says it's a Sephardic, I mean, that fits into that category a little bit.
Right, it's like
ignorance.
Kind of get a grip. Here you are creating something that is going to, you know, expose more people to Judaism, expose more people to Passover, to the Exodus, what the Jews went through. Instead of people kind of being happiness, grateful, looking for the good in that, they want to kind of, you know, call you out, be upset with you, cause issues because it's not kosher enough to their standards, right. Or they don't think it's, you know, it's according to, you know, the Jewish laws.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's something I dealt with throughout my career when you dabble in this, you know,
trying to elevate the Seder to another level, or just trying to mix together the things that you knew about. You were studying in Europe, you have a connection with Italian food, and you wanted to bring that into Passover.
I mean, what's the difference between the chicken soup? You clarify it, you know, you make it into like a consomme, as opposed to, you know, chicken water, you know, that you might get. You know, that's what it was. It was really, you know, did you make gefilte fish? Yeah. So, you know, you made them like quenelles of poisson, but you used the same fish.
Right.
You know, you didn't, you know, I didn't use different things. I just, you know, it's the techniques and the methods that we're elevating it. And, you know, it's like in Passover, you open the door, right?
Yeah, you're supposed to let Eliyahu in, right?
Well, and Eliyahu is a symbol of anyone who's not as lucky as you are, right? So, you know, this whole thing of not having it in a restaurant, I mean, that kind of goes against Passover. Because if, say, you're away from your family, it's just you and someone, and you don't have the time, so you should take it home and have it at home, or just eat it, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's not about where you're doing it. It's about, relaying the message of the Jews' exodus from Egypt with
Right.
people around you and letting people know. And one would argue doing that in a restaurant and letting more people that might not be, a part of your home or your inner circle be involved in that is even a better thing and a better way to, to celebrate. And
especially since the whole restaurant is Passover on the first night. There's no regular menu.
Okay.
Some little 5-year-old asks for a pasta with butter.
Then they kick him out right away.
You give it to him. But you know what I mean? It's like, because that's in Jewish law too. You're not supposed to fast until you become a certain age. When you're older, when you're in your, last years of your life, you don't have to fast. You can drink water. I mean, all these, the people I think who wrote these laws left them open for interpretation, and unfortunately, that's where the problem becomes, because everyone's arguing over the interpretation instead of just allowing the interpretation.
Okay. I hear what you're saying. Do you still do Passover at your restaurant?
Oh yeah. Both nights. Well, first night, the best thing is now we do the last couple of years I've been able to sell the second night to one group of people, different ones, but because, the great thing about Jews is after they eat too much, they become guilty, and they call up and cancel the second night of Passover.
Oh, okay.
It's like, well, we ate so much last night. Like, yeah, I got.
Oh, we can't come this time for the second night?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, what used to happen at Barneys all the time, because it was a large Jewish clientele. The salad would come down. Oh, this is so much food. Well, just don't eat it.
Right, there's that old Woody Allen joke where they're like, the food's terrible here. Yes, in such small portions.
Yeah, exactly.
Jews definitely like to complain. What's the weirdest complaint that you've gotten as a chef?
It's funny. Everyone asks that question, and Mother Nature kind of tells you helps you forget those type.
Okay.
Where it's like really bizarre. I mean, after, as I told my kids once, after 30 odd years with dealing with the general public, you've seen it all. And if you haven't, there's a good chance it's because it's illegal. So, I mean, I've seen it all. I really have, look, Jews are opinionated. They're an interesting, I don't want to say, I mean, people can be difficult. People can be nice, because then you're stereotyping, which is fun for comedy. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's the greatest thing. And there should be no problem with that. I mean, that's the thing I love about the guys from South Park. They make fun of everybody.
Right.
Everybody. And that's okay. You're only going to improve if you can laugh at yourself, if you can look at yourself and see a little bit of farce, a little bit of silliness, it's okay.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think that is a better way to grow and to have that kind of self-awareness, and also to be able to laugh things off and be able to take things with jest and not be taking everything so seriously, and being so hurt by something that wasn't meant to hurt you, that you want to do bad by these people, whether canceling them or not letting their businesses flourish or whatever it is.
Right. I mean, look, this whole woke thing, what I'll say is that everybody who's making a big deal about it is doing the same thing as the people who committed Me Too. Okay? It's like, look, when everyone who's a professional gets handed a set of rules, follow them. Okay? Play them. That's the rules, all right? And, look, anything that's said, I mean, I remember at Barneys, you're talked to, nobody's fired immediately. I mean, obviously, if you say something really, but that was never okay. Saying something really,
really outrageous or really offensive to somebody.
Or using certain words that, on air, those were never acceptable. Okay? So they wouldn't, and I think everyone's just making too big a deal out of it, and it's making it too divisive.
Why do you think, Barney's, Fred's, which was the name of the restaurant at Barney's, very popular, resonated so much with the, Jewish women from the Upper East Side?
Oh, Jews in general, because Barney Pressman was one of the number one Horatio Algers of his time. I took a class. I went to Queens College for a while by a visiting Princeton professor whose expertise was immigration, 1890 to 1920. It was a fascinating class, and he wrote his dissertation on 3 Horatio Algers, and one of them was Barney Pressman. And
I don't even know what Horatio Algers is.
Well, Horatio Alger is someone who, it's a terminology for someone who comes from another culture and makes it in America.
Okay.
You know, builds a business, comes with nothing. You know, the way a lot of Greeks did and opened up diners and, you know, restaurants and just made it, you know, same thing that happened here in this area. You know, they came from oppression, they got a little storefront and they, you know, lived above it, and before they knew it, they had a house on Long Island. I mean, that's what it's all about. I mean, that's what America is
Okay, it's like
about.
the American dream, kind of. Oh,
Yeah,
okay. I
Horatio
never heard.
Alger
Was that a guy, Horatio
I'm
Algers?
not really sure.
Okay. Yeah,
Now
when you
I'm
say it,
really,
I'm like,
now
who's this
I'm
Horatio
really nervous.
Algers?
I'm old. Oh, jeez. I mean, you know, I understand that when you say to mouse, the first thing a kid will say, oh, you mean on the computer? And I'm saying, no, the little thing running around a field. But wow.
You mentioned, you know, growing up, I guess that your dad liked gefilte fish, and it kind of takes you back whenever you have it, the memories. Were there other, like, traditionally Jewish foods that you had growing up that you were exposed to?
I mean, we were exposed to it all, including Chinese food on Sunday, which I never liked. And my parents thought I was weird to begin with because I was the only one who hated Chinese food.
Okay, a little weird.
I never understood it because you're hungry 45 minutes later. I never realized that it was all of the spices and everything in that. And I always had a problem with my weight. So, but yeah, I mean, we grew up on it. But, you know, my mother also kind of was one of the first people to deal with Weight Watchers. So we kind of grew up in that era where it kind of turned a little bit from eating that stuff to where it was like only a special occasion and not too much.
Okay.
You know, because I read these stories about all of my predecessors, nothing to do with Judaism in general. And a lot of these French chefs died when they were in their late 50s. All died of heart attacks, of course, imagine that. And when you look at, you know, when you find out that, you know, people ate pastrami and corned beef sandwiches 3 times a week, you want to know, well, they must have died 20 years ago.
Okay. Is that the Katz's diet? I like it. Sounds good.
Well, you know, it does until you get your first, you know, blood test and, you know, your cholesterol's through the roof. And then the doctor asks you what you eat. And then you stop eating it and you take a little Crestor and all of a sudden you come back to normal and you're like, okay. I mean,
I'd rather die young eating pastrami than live an old life eating turkey and white bread.
Even turkey. I mean, you know, there's this whole vegan thing, this vegetarian thing. I mean, we should eat, you know, you know, Michael Pollan ended up going to the other side, I think, a little bit. But, you know, before he got there, I mean, you know, eating plants, not too much, eating not too much, you know. And you know, wealthy Jews always believed in that, you know, not eating, every religion believes in you can never be too skinny and too rich, right? I believe that's what Princess Grace said, right?
Okay, no, I'm not familiar with. You can never be too skinny and too rich.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you about the bagel, because I guess Serious Eats said that you have the best NYC bagel. The bagel is a traditional Jewish food. I guess Absolutely. It came from Poland. I think bagel is derived from the Yiddish word itself.
Yep.
So you like created a bakery at Mark's off Madison, right? That you're selling bagels. This is something that like you.
This is the daytime. We have two restaurants. We have a nighttime fine dining, Mark, European, Italian, and during the day we have a bakery, which is Jewish. I think, why are you going to open up? You got to open a Jewish bakery. There aren't any. They're all dead.
Okay,
They all
yes, they
died.
have. There's like so few. There used to be so many, especially
Right.
around here on the Lower East Side. I think there's maybe one or two Kozars and maybe one other
Right.
place.
But I'm also talking about a bakery. We make black and whites.
Oh, okay. I'm a huge fan of
We
black
make
and white
we make
cookies.
Hamantaschen every day. We make rugelach
Oh, every
every
day
day.
you make komatashi, not just saving them
Absolutely.
for Purim.
Look, I went to Montreal to do some research, and we weren't certainly not there around Purim, and they had these Hamantaschen that were amazing, and I'm like, why not? It's basically it's a French butter cookie with jam in it.
Okay.
Every ethnic group puts an indent with their thumb, fills it with a little jam, and bakes it. Whether it's oil based or butter based, it depends upon the beliefs and the the tradition of the cuisine. But it's a sugar cookie basically, and so why not? And so the idea of so the bagels is interesting. Again, it's how I come back to home or Judaism, Jewish food. So my kids, I assimilated, I suppose, and I grew up. I raised my kids on the Upper West Side.
Okay, so not so far from assimilated.
Well,
Just with the mother of my kids, but not with where they were.
right, but but the fact is they went to, listen. There's a lot of garbage on the Upper West Side too, and I forget how it was. I remember my son bringing a blueberry bagel. Both of them deny this, and I know this happened.
Okay.
So and I know it happened because they deny it.
This is what they're denying?
And
I like the family feuds that you guys have. Like,
Well,
don't you dare bring a blueberry bagel into this house. I never did that, Dad. I promise.
I don't know. He's like he says something, and he goes, oh, I love it. I'm like, that's disgusting. And there was like a horror on his face because the last thing he ever wanted to do was have his father say that, and it was like a muscle reaction because I felt so much anger towards what had happened to the bagel.
I didn't raise you like this.
Well, I mean,
I thought you were going to say almost in your parenting skills that your son would get a blueberry bagel.
well, no, I mean, he got it because he was at school and it sounded cool. So and then I'm like, whoa, hold on. I'm like, this is not a traditional. I explained to him, you like it and everything, because he was a little kiddie. I mean, this was the one who ate pasta with tomato sauce, no green until he was embarrassed. Okay, he didn't wait a minute before. Okay.
Okay.
And so it's so I decide because I kind of needed something to do with my life. I was starting to have a midlife crisis, which you do when you're, when you have, as
Every day.
well, no,
Oh, that's just me.
yeah, but I mean, when you've been, when you do art, when you're a creative person, you go into crisis. I mean, writer's block, stage fright, chefs get it too. There's no term for it, but frozen. I don't know what you want to call it.
Okay.
So I decided,
Cook fright?
I couldn't find at that point. There's no good bagels in New York. There may be one or two now because, I believe that I'm one of the ones who started it because I started making bagels in 2008.
Okay.
2008 with pillowed, blown up, with breads with holes in them, disgusting. I mean, you go to, I don't want to mention names, but you go to certain or established bagel stores, their bagels today are disgusting because they're all automated. Just because you roll it and boil it, using garbage flour. I mean, you're using bromated bleach flour. You're not proofing it. You're not fermenting it. You're not doing what people don't understand is the original bagel bakers were bakers, okay? Everyone who thinks, it's separate. Oh, it's, no, this is separate. It's your.
But wasn't there like a bakers union or something?
Well,
That like
there was
all
a bagel
the
union,
the
too.
bagel union,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, but they were bakers. And, if they had to bake other bread, I'm sure they knew how to do it. So it's like, everyone's like, well, you don't make sourdough bagels. Like, no, I don't make sourdough bagels. Yeast was invented so a baker didn't have to sleep in the oven or right by it to make sure the dough was fine so he could have a family, could have a life. not everything has to be sourdough. This is hipsters talking, of course.
Oh no.
Yeah, but and so I decide.
But not the Jewish hipsters.
I decide that I'm going to start taking some bread classes because we had a pizza oven at Fred's and I was neglecting it. And plus I go up to King Arthur and I start taking bread classes. Then I decide I want to do bagels. So I did start changing the method in which bagels are made. Mine are fermented longer.
Okay.
Mine are fermented in bulk longer, so they're a little more flavorful. But I basically used the theories of the original baguette. You see, bagels are what's called pain quotidien. A pain quotidien, besides being a cafe bakery in America, and also it originated out of Belgium, its literal translation is daily bread. Daily bread consists of water, flour, salt, yeast, and maybe one other ingredient.
Okay.
Like sometimes malt, times, something else if it's tradition within.
Isn't it, malt is like a New York bagel thing, right?
Malt is a New York bagel thing, but you put them in baguettes too.
Okay.
Different kind of malt, but you do. So I'm putting, the way I do my cuisine is I always try to do it forensically. Try to look back at how would these people have, someone in 1890 who was me, how would they have worked it? Listen, maybe they didn't have money, but they had a brain.
Right.
And they had DNA, and they had ingenuity, and they had, passion, all those things. Those are all, analog terms. Passion is analog. It's not digital, okay? So I've been using digital to do research, which is great. But, so I kind of tried to figure out how were bagels made before automation. What screwed up the whole food system was the end of World War II, the end of the Korean War. They had thousands of scientists, how to employ them, so they employed them in the food industry to destroy our food culture, AKA high fructose corn syrup. 1975 changed the world.
Okay, wow.
And if everybody hates Nixon for Watergate, I don't want to minimize Watergate, but what Nixon did with Earl Butz and created corn is what destroyed the food system in America, okay? So Nixon was a bad guy. But, so what had happened was I decided to make, a bagel and get into bagels because I had Fred's and we did have a smoked fish platter and a couple of eggs and Nova because it was Sunday and people asked for it. We put it on the menu and we sold it. So I said, okay, instead of buying, because I would be buying these bagels and I just could, I would like either take off on Sunday or just when I'm there, because I had to be there, I just didn't feel good.
You didn't feel good about the bagels, about like selling these?
Well, listen, Mark, come on. You're a European trained chef. It's water, flour, salt, and yeast, for God's sakes. If you can't find a product, make the stuff.
Right.
So I started taking it on me. And then all of a sudden I started making them every Saturday and Sunday. And then, people they didn't sell. And that's because the general manager said, Mark, everybody knows what they want. I said, okay, no problem. Well, give them out for free. So I put them in a bread basket. And that to me is what I feel is my history, my Judaism, is that I'm a merchant. That's why a lot of people in my industry frowned upon Fred's and Barneys. Oh, it's in a store. Oh yeah, but meanwhile, nobody knows who you are in Charles de Gaulle when they're checking you in and they see you the chef of Fred's and there's an extra seat in business class. They didn't put you in, they put me in.
Right, okay.
Because of who it was.
So it's like what we were talking about before, where there are these purists in Judaism, there are these purists in cooking too, and everywhere,
And everywhere, and it is ridiculous, but it's a reality. So, the bagel saga went on, and my children ended up learning. I showed them. I said, look, forget about the blueberry bagel, because you could put blueberries in my bagel, okay? And I'm not going to argue with that, because if that's the new food trend, okay. Listen, we make rainbow bagels once a year. Are you kidding me? I do that. That to me, that's, a sign of solidarity.
Okay.
Look, I work in an industry.
So the blueberry bagels are solidarity for all the guys that aren't getting any.
Well, we don't make blueberry bagels. But,
just the rainbow ones once a year.
Well, I mean, look, you don't need to eat food coloring. I mean, but it's like everything. I mean, Jews go to Christmas and people say, it's a respect.
Right.
It's a respect for someone else's.
But that's why you do the rainbow ones.
Yes.
But that's great. That's really nice.
But that's what Judaism is about. See, that's what I learned it's about. I learned to be tolerant. I learned to be respectful. I learned to understand, even though we had no money. I mean, we had money, but not money. We didn't have any money compared to what I've seen in my life. But all these things, respect, tolerance, love, understanding, sympathy, empathy. These are free. They
Absolutely.
don't cost anything. And that's, and if you can put that in your craft, you're going to be much better at it.
What do you think should go on a bagel?
Well, what should go on a bagel? What should go on a bagel is cream cheese. And, now that I'm on Crestor, do I frown at tofu cream cheese? No. And everyone's going to say, I know we don't have it at Mark's off Madison, but we don't get a lot of asking for it. Although I'm thinking of ordering it because I need to eat it. But, listen, I have no problem once a week. Look, here's what I said to myself, because I've been fighting my weight my whole life, okay? And, according to my endocrinologist, we need to be extremely aggressive on keeping diabetes out of your body because of what you do for a living in your age. So I get all of this, okay? I understand there's Ozempic, all of this stuff. I get it all. So, but I also understand that the biggest enemy is deprivation. So once a week, I have a bagel with tomato, onion, smoked salmon. Lots of times I'll have my own lox because, I don't tell the cardiologist because even if your blood pressure is fine, they tell you not to have salt, and I do that. I try to stay away from cream cheese because, I find that at a certain point in my life, cheese is not my friend. But
Okay.
But I love, listen, we don't use Philadelphia. We use Ben's, which is from Orange County, New York, which is where that's a big Jewish shtetl up there.
Okay, I mean, Ben sounds like a Jewish cream cheese brand.
Yeah, and it's good, and we whip it, and we do 3 types, plain, scallion, and vegetable.
Okay.
We try to stay traditional. I mean, my favorite is sable.
Sable is delicious.
Which was my father's too. It's amazing. My father used to look like would have this like shitting grin on his face and just dissecting a whitefish. And I would think this was the most disgusting, gross. I'd wake up after, being up all night with my friends and walk into the dining room and smell this smoked fish and turn blue, and he'd be laughing, it's kind of like, it's, look, if you eat it once a week, you're not going to die. The problem is Jews and in the 40s, 50s, and 60s ate it 7 days a week.
Okay, the bagels.
Just bagels,
Or smoked fish, too.
I don't think smoked fish is that great for you. It's a lot of sodium.
Right. Do you think bagels should be toasted or not toasted?
Now you're hitting the point. You're hitting all the points.
Right? Sorry to get really deep into it. Anti-Semitism and then whether bagels should get toasted or not.
It's not anti-Semitic to toast a bagel. Only if it's a day old it is. It's not anti-Semitic. No, I'm kidding. Totally kidding, because you never want to marginalize anti-Semitism. But the reality is what I've come to terms with is that the bagel was destroyed. It didn't exist. It was extinct.
Okay.
And by 2000 and something, maybe even a little earlier, it was extinct.
Blenders ruined the bagel.
Well, he did. I mean, their Wikipedia talks about that, but he was the man who took the bagel. Listen, I did a bagel video. I did a bagel and a bialy video back in 2008, 2009. I think 2008. The bagel video has 1 million hits. The bialy has 30,000. So that'll tell you, You know, and then my friends, like, you know, the person who did it's like, we got to do more, we got to do more. I said, dude, unless we're doing that stuff about the bagel, it's not me. I'm the Bialy. I'm 30,000, okay? Which is not bad. I get it, but it's been, you know what. But so the reality is, Lenders was, you know, both good and bad. And, you know, and what Murray Lender did that destroyed the bagel was automated. Okay?
Okay.
Now, it's not so much that you extrude the bagel, which means you put the whole dough into a machine, put it down a pipeline, and you have like a little thing and you punch it out like cookies, right? I mean, that you could get away with, although you end up having to make the bagel a little softer. Otherwise, you'll break the machine. But they also figured out to save on boiling and things like that. And then, you know, you start using cheap flour and you have bread with no integrity. Because bread has to have integrity. Bread's like human beings. It's a live organism because of yeast. It has to have integrity.
I like that. I'm gonna use that next time I have some bad bread and be like, this bread has no integrity.
It doesn't. It's called
And it cheated on its wife too.
Exactly. No, but integrity means it holds together. It's a well-made product.
Okay.
You know, it doesn't make you sick. It doesn't give you heartburn. You know, it's a well-made. You know, I mean, you know, chefs do have some kind of Hippocratic oath or whatever. You know, 'cause
Okay.
you're eating it, right?
Right.
Like, you know, you'd come up and I'd give you the French fries when we were doing the Freds at Louis, and you know, if that made you sick, you wouldn't have been happy. You know, so there is a responsibility as a chef to make sure everything is, you know, sanitary, clean, everything is safe.
Right,
because
right,
people
right.
are ingesting it. You can,
For sure.
People have died from ingesting food.
Yes, definitely.
You know,
But not at Mark's off Madison.
No, not at all.
0 deaths.
Exactly.
So only if there's no integrity should the bagel be toasted? Is that what you're saying?
No, only if it's a day old.
Only if it's a day old. So if it's less than a day old, do not toast the
It's
bagel.
actually an insult to a French baker by warming bread. You never eat bread hot.
You're not supposed to have hot bread.
Not supposed to have hot bread because the bread needs to cure.
Okay, to like cook properly or to cure. I thought like you cured fish.
Well,
I didn't realize you could cure bread.
Curing
too.
is usually the last couple of moments of the cooking process.
Okay.
Setting. It sets.
It
The
sets.
crumb sets.
Okay, so Mark, I know we talked a little bit about Passover. We talked about how you upset members of the Jewish community by having Passover at a restaurant and by having your menu be somewhat Sephardic. What do you think are the quintessential, besides the Seder foods, like the quintessential foods that you should have like at your Seder or have on Passover, but that aren't part of like the ritual? But when it comes time for the meal, what is 100% should be part of your Passover meal?
Well, I mean, I believe it should be traditional.
Okay.
I really do. But I also love some of the vegetarian. Look, I think that we're tolerant people. When you have a 18-year-old and they're a vegetarian, for God's sakes, what would we do when we were 18? You know, it's like, geez, remember a little bit. You know what I mean? So
Read the room is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, look, yeah. I mean, you know, you're supposed to only eat certain parts of the animal because, you know, you're not supposed to eat the hind legs, right?
But those are like the laws of kashrus. But just as like
But
a
I
chef
think-
and as a
I
Jew,
think
like
that
what would you
kosher-
recommend?
I mean, kosher style.
Kosher style.
Absolutely. I'm gonna write I'm gonna write a cookbook. Everyone says, you know, you're gonna do a memoir. A memoir of what? You know, I mean, yeah, I want to give on my, you know, my knowledge, but you know, I'm not so memorable, so there's no memoir. You know.
I don't know that blueberry bagel story.
Well, you know, but
Chapter 1.
Well, you know, we'll do those on the talk show. but the reality is that I want to write a Jewish cookbook.
Oh, nice.
But I want to do it as a professional chef.
Okay.
Like, this is my Jewish kitchen, and it could be yours too.
So when you're writing this book or when you would tell people, okay, I'm having a Seder, this is my first Seder that I'm going to have, I don't know what I should cook for the meal, what would you tell people? This is what's going to be in the meal. These are some of the recipes in your cookbook.
Well, it would be the brisket.
The Italian-style brisket?
Italian-style brisket, absolutely.
Okay, because I saw that's one of the recipes you have on your
Yeah,
website.
you're putting wine on it. The other thing I would say is, I can tell you that, you know, Sephardic Jews eat lamb. So
Okay.
you do like a lamb brisket, or you do like a shoulder of lamb, because you can only do the front end of the animal, right? Because the sciatic nerve is in the leg. That's not kosher.
Okay, so that's good. The lamb too, because Easter lamb is a very Eastery
Well, I mean,
food
it's
too,
just
right? So
outdoor.
Passover, spring,
Yeah.
if that's a good bringing the lamb.
You could do veal, but not everybody. Doesn't seem to be too politically correct these days. And and you don't want to. So and chicken, poultry. The only thing we kept from the Sephardic Seder, unfortunately, was the Sephardic Harosis,
Okay.
and because it's so much better than the Ashkenazi Harosis. I mean,
So what's in the Sephardic one? Because I know the Ashkenazi one, it's like
Apples.
apple and nuts and stuff.
Yeah. And,
So what goes in the Sephardic one? It has dates instead. Is that the deal?
dates, oranges, figs.
Oranges.
Yeah, figs. Dates, figs, oranges, dried fruit, prunes, dried apricot. You put whatever you want in it, because all these things were Sephardic.
Okay.
And we use a lot, and we use almonds. I think I have to look at the recipe, but because the recipe is again, my recipe from all my interviews of the Italian Jews that I interviewed in Rome and Torino, Italy.
Okay.
So I didn't go to the left, I didn't go to the right. I stick right down here. Figs, dates are the two,
All right, the difference in the Sephardic Haroset. So that's
opposed
what
to
Mark is
apples.
recommending. Get away from the Ashkenazi's Haroset when you're making the sandwich.
both.
What is your favorite part of Passover?
It's funny. I used to hate the Seder, and now that my parents are all gone, somebody has to be the boss, so I kind of try to run it a little bit. I get the same stuff that I gave my parents or my kids and stuff. Is that my favorite part of the Seder is sitting and talking and being around the table with my family, because very rarely does that happen. Unfortunately, that's a part of American culture, is that we don't eat together every night as a family.
Okay, right.
I'm watching Downton Abbey. I'm a little late to that game, but they dine every night, with tails, and I'm not saying we get dressed up, but there is
And
something
that's a
to
Jewish
that.
thing too, like Friday night dinner, getting the family together, coming together over food, whether it be on Passover or some of the other high holidays.
Yeah, I think that we started at times. We've done Shabbat dinners. We don't do them at Mark's off Madison, but we did them at Fred's. They never kind of took off, but there is something about staying home on Friday night and having dinner with your family once a week. I mean, is it really that much to ask? I mean, yeah, if you're on a business trip, okay, you come back, but whatever. I mean, it's just become so easy to become a pod in your own pod.
Okay, right. To be like separate and to have these times like Passover or Shabbat dinner where the family could come together and be with one each other, share what's going on in their lives, their dreams or whatever. That's a great thing. That's a great concept in Judaism.
I'll use an example of how it could also translate to the modern time. So we didn't do this at Passover, but at Hanukkah, the whole family would get together. My stepfather, who is still alive, so that's us, my brother, and then the kids. And all of a sudden, we started playing. What's that card game, Against Humanity?
Oh, Cards Against Humanity? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, something like that.
I think so.
I got to tell you, Passover changed forever.
Oh, wow. I like this Passover. You're playing Cards Against Humanity?
Hanukkah changed forever.
Oh, Hanukkah. This was a Hanukkah thing.
Yeah, I think we did it once or twice after Passover, too. I mean, it's over. Passover's over. It's a celebratory holiday. Cards Against Humanity. And all when you're hearing Grandpa at 96 say words, and my nieces are turning purple, and you realize that this because everyone, that's terrible, that should be banned, this is a horrible thing, and when actually it's kind of amazing. So my son one year brings someone from college. He went to school in L.A., and he goes, Dad, you're not going to believe this, but everyone in Cal Arts thinks I have the coolest family. And I'm like, why? He goes, why? Because we played Cards Against Humanity, and Grandpa said the word blowjob. I'm like, oh, yeah, listen, hey, take it while you can get it, my friend.
Okay, wow, that's really nice.
And he was from Korea, I think, if I remember correct. I'm not really sure, but I know he was an international.
Okay, your friend's son.
Yeah, and he thought it was the coolest thing he's ever saw in his life. He was like, wow, I wish, so it's kind of interesting how.
Okay, so either get involved with someone that's Jewish so you could get together with their family, or get into Cards Against Humanity.
Or both, But it's just, I'm sure a Jew invented that game. It seems something that, would be sarcastic enough. It's kind of like a Larry David moment.
Right. And we do invent a lot of things. Well, Mark, I can't thank you enough for coming to the show and for all the kindness you've shown me since I've met you. You've been such a great guy. Go check out Mark's off Madison. If you have no place to go for your Seder, you could go there, or just go there and get some bagels. See how Mark revolutionized the New York City bagel and made it less crappy and made it good. And check him out online. Is there anything you want to plug? I mean, Mark's Off Madison is on TikTok. It's on Instagram.
Yeah, follow us on Instagram. Follow me, Chef Mark Strausman. And yeah, just stay true to yourself, man. Stop judging everybody. Have a good day.
Take it easy. What a great message. Can't say anything better than that.